Hi, my name is Amanda Silver, and I'm Director of Program Management for the team that creates Visual Studio's tools for client applications. Today, I want to share with you some new features that will allow you to use the power and productivity you've come to love in Visual Studio to build mobile applications across iOS, Android, and Windows devices. Mobile devices are now at the center of the technology ecosystem, and even enterprise developers who have historically written client-server applications are rapidly shifting to embrace this reality. Developers building customer-facing apps need to reach the breadth of devices that exist in the consumer market. And developers building internal-facing business applications are being asked to target the same breadth of personal devices that employees bring into the workplace. The pace of smartphone adoption is like nothing we've seen before. It's happening 10 times faster than the PC boom of the 80s, 2 times faster than the internet boom of the 90s, and 3 times faster than the recent social networking explosion. In 2015, the mobile internet will overtake the desktop internet, and 90% of enterprises will have 2 or more platforms to support. There are 2 common approaches to building mobile applications. Developers use the native platform technologies to create apps for each device by using the native tools provided by each vendor. These developers struggle with the ability to reuse code and skills between devices or to target new devices with their existing skills on a specific technology. Therefore, they're looking to build cross-platform mobile native applications. Other developers use web technologies to create browser-based apps optimized for mobile devices. But as the browser is constrained, developers struggle with the ability to create applications that can leverage the full capabilities of the devices that they target. The path of a mobile app developer often begins with a choice. Develop for iOS, Android, or Windows. It's a choice that instantly diminishes the size of your potential audience, but developers often have to hold their nose and reluctantly make a decision. Those who need to reach all 3 app stores choose to rewrite the application for each platform. Visual Studio enables you to have maximal reach while achieving significant code reuse. With Xamarin, C# developers can share business logic across iOS, Android, and Windows applications. With Apache Cordova, web developers can achieve maximal code reuse by building cross-platform mobile applications using web standards technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. What I'm talking about today is the development tools to build client applications. But building modern mobile apps is much more than just creating a responsive, interactive client. The best applications are connected, kept up to date, and are consistently delivering new functionality to their end users. Microsoft offers a complete stack solution to build your mobile applications, from mobile backend as a service to rich ALM tools to facilitate a rapid release cadence. With that, let's dig into the different approaches. With Xamarin and Visual Studio, you can create rich native applications that span multiple platforms across Windows, iOS, and Android while maximizing code reuse. With native mobile applications, you have full access to the device features, high flexibility and customization per device, and the best user experience and performance for that device. Microsoft and Xamarin have both a technical and a business partnership, and you can use all of the capabilities in Visual Studio and C# to build your applications. You can share that app logic code across device platforms. And 100% of the native APIs are exposed. So everything you can do in Xcode or Android Studio, you can do with .NET and Visual Studio. What is Xamarin? It's an extension to Visual Studio, and it allows you to build iOS and Android apps entirely within Visual Studio. It compiles .NET and C# code to native platforms, and you can use all of the capabilities for application lifecycle management and what you're familiar with in the IDE in Visual Studio to build these applications. You can build your apps faster reusing your existing skills and even your code and binaries with maximum flexibility. And you can also create fully native user interfaces. With Xamarin, you can create UI with drag and drop simplicity. You can target multiple screen sizes, resolutions, and OS platforms and versions. The layouts are saved in the native resource formats. And the world's best Android designer is available in Visual Studio. But you don't have to compromise on performance. With Xamarin, you get native compilation to get native performance. On iOS, Xamarin performs full ahead-of-time compilation to produce an ARM binary. On Android, it takes advantage of the just-in-time compilation on the Android device. With Visual Studio tools for Apache Cordova, you can create a single hybrid application for iOS, Android, and Windows, reusing your skill set in web standards, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Apache Cordova is an open source project that provides a set of device APIs that allow a mobile app developer to access native device functionality, such as the camera, native telephony, or even a barcode scanner from JavaScript-based APIs. It also mostly abstracts away the platform-specific packaging for each of the native mobile operating systems. Through our partnership with the Apache Cordova community, we've contributed several updates to the framework in the last few months, including support for Windows 8.1 Universal projects, support for platform-specific configuration settings, and security updates, which benefit all target platforms. We're working with the industry-wide community of contributors to ensure that Apache Cordova is enterprise-ready. The tooling adds new project templates and tools for you to target the Apache Cordova project within Visual Studio. It's built on top of the existing great HTML, CSS, and JavaScript tooling in Visual Studio, but it integrates with Apache Cordova. So you have things like IntelliSense support for the Cordova API, build for any targeted platform such as Android, and directly from Visual Studio, you can run and debug the app on a device emulator or a remote device. In this most recent preview, in addition to Visual Studio debugging support for Android devices and emulators, we now support debugging against iOS devices and simulators. The cool thing about these tools is that you'll naturally know how to use it if you're familiar with web development. It also supports the most popular JavaScript frameworks that you're probably already using for your mobile web applications, such as Angular, jQuery Mobile, or Backbone. It also supports creating the applications in TypeScript, an extension to JavaScript, which supports the productivity and scale of statically typed languages. New in this preview, you can create shared C++ components that will work across Android and Windows and complement it with a presentation tier written in Xamarin. With support for multi-device C++ in Visual Studio, you can reuse existing C++ libraries to target multiple platforms. You can leverage C++ libraries to build complete end-to-end Xamarin Android native applications in Visual Studio. You can do this with the productivity you've come to love in Visual Studio, with familiar IntelliSense refactoring and debugging tools. You can also build, debug, and deploy native activity-type Android applications in Visual Studio. If you've ever done cross-platform development, you know that compilation for each platform requires a litany of open source and platform-specific components. Building for Android requires Ant, Java, and the Android SDK. Deploying to iOS devices requires specific software. Windows requires the Windows SDK. After all is said and done, there are over a dozen toolchain dependencies that can take hours, even days, to properly download, install, and configure. Visual Studio will get you up and running quickly with a well-configured dev environment, and it'll help you stay that way. This new preview also includes a brand new Android emulator that's trustworthy and fast. Now let's see what I'm talking about and go to the demo. Both the extension for Visual Studio 2013 and the new preview for 2015 install and stay up to date with all of the components required for a productive environment for cross-platform mobile development. Once installed, Visual Studio has a few options for cross-platform development. I'll start with new project templates to create multi-device hybrid applications using web standards, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS that can be deployed to iOS and Windows. As you can see, I have, within the JavaScript templates, I have multi-device hybrid applications. And I can create an Apache Cordova app using this, or I can go to TypeScript and do it that way. In addition to JavaScript, you can also use TypeScript, which was designed to be a strongly typed, interleavable superset of JavaScript, so you can get the fidelity of the web runtime with the developer productivity you need to build apps at scale. We also have some samples that are based in AngularJS, Backbone.js, and Win.js, but the templates that we ship in the product are blank templates. I'm going to start with an app that I've already created, and what you can see here is that I'm using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Within the CSS, you can actually see, within the app, you can see that I'm actually using less. So we can see this form.less file. I'm using JavaScript in this case instead of TypeScript, but I could just as easily use TypeScript. And then within the scripts, you can see that I have dependencies on Angular in this case. Once you've written the app, you can deploy it to a myriad of targets. browser hosts, emulators, simulators, and devices to test your app with high fidelity. In this case, we're going to launch to the iOS simulator. Since the first CTP, we've supported deploying to the iOS simulator. In the latest edition of the tools, we've added the capability to actually attach a debugger to any iOS simulator or device. We're just going to select the iOS in this case, and we're going to run the simulator against iPhone 6. I'm going to click play, and what we can see here is that I actually have a remote service that's on my iOS box that is actually listening for the build to happen, and then once it gets the build, it's going to run the simulator. We'll see that pop up in just a second. We see the simulator pop up, and you can see that my app is being deployed in this case. And we are actually loading content from the cloud from Azure Mobile Services. And what I can do here is I can go in and I can create a new reservation in this case. We'll use my old license plate and a start date, a start hour, and end hour, and we have all of the inputs there. And then I can go down to the car picture, and instead of taking a picture, I can basically access any core device capabilities. In this case, I'm just going to browse, and I'm going to choose Godzilla attacking the car, and click Save. Not only do I have the app actually running, I actually have it in the debug mode. So I can go into Debug and Windows, and I can bring up the DOM Explorer and show all. In addition to having the app attached, I also have a debugger attached. So I can actually open the DOM Explorer and click Select Element. And we can see that my element selection has actually been highlighted. I can come in here and I can even edit the HTML. In addition to being able to deploy an app to iOS, I can also attach a debugger. In this case, I'm going to take the DOM Explorer and select an element. I'm going to jump back into the simulator and highlight an element, and then jump back into Visual Studio. And you can see that my element has been highlighted. I can come back here and actually make an edit as HTML and take my cursor off of that and go back to the app. And we can see that it's actually persisted. Coming back into Visual Studio, we're just going to stop debugging here. Now I showed you using the camera capability, but I want to quickly show you how you access that in the Cordova app. So just like a normal app for Windows or Windows Phone, Cordova apps also have a config that basically edits various properties about the application. So you can see that there are things like the display name and the start page and the application ID that are highlighted here. But in addition to that, we also have plugins. Now, plugins are basically the way that you can get native device APIs for my app. And that's how you add capabilities that are not yet ubiquitously available across mobile device platforms currently in your user's hands. In this case, we're using the camera, the device capability, and file access to be able to persist the photo that I just selected. So what you get with Cordova apps are really the best of both worlds. You can use web technology and you still get access to native capabilities. Okay, we're just going to close this instance of Visual Studio and hop to another one. In this case, I'm building a cross-platform mobile app using C# and Xamarin. Now, if we go to File New, you can see that with Xamarin installed, within C#, I can also create apps for Android and iOS. In this case, I'm building an Android app, but as you can see, we also have multiple targets for iOS. For the Android app, one of the things that's kind of awesome about coding in C# is that you can actually share code across your Xamarin apps for Android and iOS, but also across Windows Universal apps. So in this case, you can actually see that I have mycompany.visitors.client.core, which is a portable class library. And I actually have a full project system in here with all kinds of CSS code and even other assets in there. I can go in here and I can actually go and edit the properties. And what you can see here is that it actually outlines the targets for my app. I can change that if I want to be able to deploy this portable class library to other targets as well. We're just going to open up this visitdetail.axml, and what you can see here is that the layout for my app is already deployed. What you can see here is that I can preview the layout for my app in the context of a designer. And this is actually one of the best Android designers that's available. I can even flip the rotation to see how this particular UI element kind of shows up in a different orientation. The Visual Studio 2015 preview comes with a brand new fast Android emulator that can be used across your Cordova, Xamarin, and C++ cross-platform mobile apps. It uses Hyper-V, so it doesn't conflict with Windows Phone emulators, and it's optimized to run on Windows devices. So we are deploying the app, building the app, deploying the Mono runtime, and the latest API. And then once the app is packaged up, it'll be copied to the device, and we can see that it's loading. You can see that Visual Studio is transitioned into debug mode, and I can select an element here, and I can see that that element actually, that page looks pretty much exactly like what the designer shows over here. If we rotate this into that view, we can actually see that those things are pretty much aligned. With these resources, you can get the downloads and extensions that will help you start building mobile apps across iOS, Android, and Windows with Visual Studio. You can also use these links to learn more about TypeScript and follow along as we deliver updates to this preview. I want to thank you for using Visual Studio and invite you to provide feedback.